Thank you. I was so looking forward to this weekend. I went to my first workshop 2 weeks ago in Stanford, and it was amazing. And right afterwards, I had gotten home. I live in New York. I got home on Sunday, and I was feeling beautiful and great. And I went outside. I live in a small building, townhome, and I started to water my sidewalk, to clean my sidewalk and the steps, and I just felt so alive. Having the water splash on me, the sun and the sky, and people started to come by and they were smiling and laughing, and a woman came by with a little dog and asked if the dog could play in the water, and it was just so much fun. And I started to contemplate about how much I love nature, and this summer was really, it hit home, I think probably for the first time in a long time. And in my mind I said, I know that I need to get away on weekends, and that I love the water, and I love the being outside and watching the sky. And I said, I guess I'll have a home where I could do that on weekends. And it was an absolute knowing that that was happening. And then after that thought, it was just peaceful. And I started to look at the sidewalk, and I started seeing the lines in the sidewalk, and I started imagining myself as I walk. I look at every step, and I said, how do I focus on deliberately to keep that feeling that I had of just peace? Like at that moment, it wasn't about the house. It wasn't about having anything. It was just even now I feel it inside me, just the peace of it and the feeling great and the love that was all around. And like, how do I focus? And I saw that I never before gave myself permission to constantly think about feeling good. And then over the course of the 2 weeks, I started to experience what you were just speaking. In fact, everything you were just speaking about was like, wow, this is just what I've been going through. And things started to happen, and I started to see myself as like this one part that felt like things were breaking down, but on the inside, another level, like, oh, this is great. I'm learning things I can get through, but I had this dichotomy going on, and I was, instead of working like why me, is like, okay, little thoughts on feeling good and getting out of it, but how do I focus more? How do I do more of that work on a deeper level, you know?
Well, there are a number of things that we want to say in response to what you've just offered, because everything that you presented here, it was a very clear, very well-spoken perspective of vibration. And we just want to lay a basis here to make clear the experience and how the vibration that is behind it, how that all works together. And then we'll move forward into the specifics of what you're reaching for here. So first we want to say that on the heels of a gathering like here today, where you had listened yourself into the vortex, over the course of that day, you had released enough resistance that you had really tuned to a new vibrational place, which means your point of attraction had shifted. So everything in your world shifts. The way the world looked to you, the way the water felt as it splashed you, the way the air smelled that day, the way everything sparkled and looked as you looked out. Even the people who rendezvoused with you and the little dog who rendezvoused with you, all on your vibrational wavelength and all reflecting back to you where you were vibrationally. That's how law of attraction is working. And it was particularly poignant for you because you had been focused upon focus and you'd been focused upon thought. And so you were consciously aware of what was coming back to you, what was coming back to your point of attraction. And then, an interesting thing, because you were so in the vortex where cooperative components are already assembled and continually assembling, you began rendezvousing with little dogs, you began rendezvousing with happy people, But you were also rendezvousing with your own happy thoughts. You were rendezvousing with your own ability to happily translate your environment. And you began also rendezvousing with happy thoughts about future experience. In other words, this is what we mean when we say, when you get into the vortex and you spend a little time there, you begin to be able to translate. You become a cooperative component so that you begin to see what your future holds. And that's what happened to you. You saw a sort of glimpse into your future experience. But there's a subtle line, a distinction really worth noting. And that is that as you were so enjoying your moment in time, you came to a normal human conclusion. You decided or translated, I feel like this because I'm out here in nature. I feel like this. I'm having an emotional response to a condition. So then your thought process turned to, so if I could control more conditions, that's what I'll do. I'll get a house and I'll go away on the weekend and I'll create this condition to which I can have this emotional response. Backwards. Now, as we say, it's subtle and it's fine, and it's the way your logic began to flow. In other words, it doesn't it make perfect sense when you're happy Esther says, everywhere they go, we should have a house here. Because they'll be looking out into this beautiful day across the beautiful mountains out of the hotel room this morning. So much beautiful trees and so little anything blocking the view. It is just so beautiful. In Asheville last week, looking out into those smoky mountains, the clouds just settled right down into the fields, right at their feet, outside their window. We should have a house here. And so we get that when you're having a moment, your logic says, let me do what I can to recreate more of this in my life so that I can have a feeling response to this. And we say, it's backwards. What you want to do is realize that this is in your life because you've come to this vibrational place, and if you can maintain that vibrational place, this will come to you again and again and again and again and again and again in endless ways. In other words, we promise you that and we're not trying to talk you out of your weekend place at all. We think that you should have it and much more. We just want to make sure that you understand that it's not about creating a condition to which you can have an emotional response. It's about focusing yourself into an emotional response to which conditions will then align with. And so that's why then it began to break down a little bit, because you got into that good feeling space, identified how you'd like to recreate more of those spaces so that you could have that experience, and then you began observing your current condition, which wasn't so conducive to that high-flying good feeling that you had before. Make sense to you?
Very much so. So
recently we've been talking, and we've come upon a very powerful acknowledgement that what we've been saying for years, that when you think in general terms, you are always less resistant than when you think in specific terms. But it is so fun once you get into the vortex to get more and more specific. But if you get too specific before you're really practiced, then the vortex spits you out. And so it's a little bit of that went on. Even with every process that we've ever offered, every one of them is offered to help you to release resistance so that you can allow the vortex to take you in. Are you understanding what we mean by this vortex? We can hear you trying to explain to your family where you were today. There's this man, he seems nice enough. He calls his wife Abraham. And she must be some sort of a split personality, because she refers to herself as we, when clearly you can just see one person standing there. And she makes this big circle and insists that it's the vortex. No, none of us can see anything, no. And she says, we're in there. So is everything else we want, and that the rest of us should go in. That's pretty much it. We work to help you to realize that you live in a vibrational universe, and when you accept that the vibration of your vortex precedes all of those wonderful manifestations, so that you start feeling for the feeling of the vortex. But the feeling of the vortex is a general feeling. The example that we recently offered is, so you say, I want a weekend getaway. Sounded and felt pretty good. I want a weekend getaway. And I want it to be, where?
Long Island.
I want it to be on Long Island. And I want...
Water.
I want it to have a water view. And it will probably cost about... Is there that much money?
Yeah.
So right away there's clashing in the vibration. So too specific. So a more general statement is, I am so looking forward to what the future holds for me. Softer and easier. But not as satisfying, you might say. And we say, the trick is to let being in the vortex be what matters, and then let the dreams be spawned from inside the vortex. Where what a lot of people are doing, they're out here conjuring a dream because they know so clearly what they don't want. I'm so tired of all these people around here, and I'm tired of working so hard and never having a break, and I'm tired of being tired. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, and so I need some relief from all of that. And so in those specifics, you are creating some really wonderful specifics, but you've practiced the specifics that are a vibrational long way from Long Island. In other words, you've practiced a vibration that is specific, but it's on a different end of the stick. So the trick, it's not a trick, it's really a tool, it's really a process, is to get into the vortex any way you can, and then be more specific. But here's the distinction that we want you to make. Once you get into the vortex, and you just hang around because it feels good to hang around, and then you don't maintain your focus because you have a life and you've got family and you have work and stuff, and so your vibration fluctuates, so you're not in the vortex. And then you find yourself in the vortex again, and you milk it, and you try to stay as general as you can so that you can stay there longer. What you will begin to notice is that if you will let your only intention be to get in the vortex and feel the relief and good feeling of the vortex, the more often you do that, the more likely you are to stay a little longer each time. And the more likely you are to stay a little longer each time, the more likely the vortex is to tune your frequency. It will call your frequency into a less resistant place, into a higher vibration. So as you get called by the vortex into that higher and higher and higher vibration, then the specifics will be revealed to you from inside the vortex. And there are worlds of difference between getting specific outside the vortex and then trying to get in, and getting in the vortex generally and letting the vortex give you the specifics. Can you feel the difference?
Yeah.
You'll hear much more as we're moving forward, unless you have something that you want to talk about. That really sets a good tone for this gathering today.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
indeed.
you,
Yes, indeed. We want you to realize that in this focusing world of which we are all a part, that as you are focusing into something that is happening right now, and you are acknowledging that there is a problem brewing, you can tell because it feels bad to you as you poke around at it. We want you to realize that as you take the time to poke around at that problem, that without even knowing it, you're poking around at the solution too. Because on the other end of every vibration is the other end of every vibration. In other words, when you know what you don't want, what you do want is coming into focus. The thing is, it's coming into focus over there where your inner being is, not over here where you are. So the more you poke at a problem, the more your inner being discovers the solution.